Welcome to Cebsar-talk. I am Evans Apia Kisi, the host of Cebsar-talk. Cebsar is Center for Better Society Advocacy and Research Africa. Cebsar Africa is a non-profit organization that believes in a better society for all. We in Cebsar Africa believe that a better society begins with you and I. Hashtag, a better society begins with me. For more information, please log on to www.cebsarafrica.org. Please follow us on the various social media platforms: YouTube, Cebsar-talk, Facebook at Cebsar Africa, Instagram, Cebsar Africa, and Twitter at Cebsar Africa. Like always, today we bring you another interesting discussion on the theme Ghana's power and energy sector. Ghanaians are currently facing frequent power cuts. For instance, residents in Accra and some parts of Winneba are being asked to embrace themselves for intensive power cuts as the situation may extend to May 2021. Between 2013 and 2016, Ghana went into frequent on and off power situation. Governments over the years have introduced various measures to help eradicate the situation, what has come to be known in Ghanaian jargon as Dumsor, meaning on and off unstable power, and to solve what we describe as canker on the economic progress of the nation and on the livelihoods of the people. In this episode of Cebsar-talk, we examine and appraise the various energy levies, various measures introduced by the government to help solve the canker and alternatives we could explore to end this canker bedeviling our economy. And to help us deal with such an important issue are Mr. Theophilus Kobina-Sapi. He's currently a doctoral researcher at the Technical University of Munich, Germany. He holds MSc Physics, Applied and Engineering Physics from the Technical University of Munich, Germany. He also holds an MSc in Photonics from the Friedrich Schiller University, Jena in Germany. He holds BSc in Engineering Physics from the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. His research focus lies in energy conversion and storage, fuel cells, electrocatalysis. It's a pleasure once again to host you. Welcome to Cebsar-talk, Mr. Theophilus Kobina-Sapi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Apiakisi, and thanks for having me.
Great. And then our next guest is our own engineer, Maximilian Kwarteng. He's currently the Senior Technical Manager at Strategic Security Systems. He's a member of the Industrial Advisory Board member, the University of Energy and Natural Resources in Ghana. He's also a technical committee member of the Ghana Standards Authority. In terms of his profession, he's a professional member of Ghana Institute of Engineers and a member of International Association of Engineering. He was MBA in Green Energy and Sustainable Businesses from the Bologna Business School, University of Bologna, Italy. I must say it's a pleasure to host you once again, Engineer Maximilian Kwarteng. Welcome to Cebsar-talk, sir.
Thank you, sir, for having me, and good evening to everyone.
Great, and I must also say that we are streaming live on Facebook, and so our fellow Cebsarians, don't forget to send in your questions and your comments, and I can assure you that it would be answered for you right here. So let me welcome you gentlemen once again to Cebsar-talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So maybe I'd like to start with you, Engineer Kwarteng, because you are in Ghana, and perhaps the question that is on the minds of many Ghanaians, including those of us who are even outside currently, is that is Dumsor back? What is the situation in Ghana now? Is Dumsor back, and is this something we can end? I know we would get to that part, whether we are able to deal with it or not. But what is it? Is Dumsor really back in Ghana?
Thank you, Mr. Kisi. Once again, good evening to your viewers and listeners. Well, I think when you look at the nomenclature of Dumsor, it is not just with the erratic power situation, but also the continuous nature of it, and relatively the period that the name came out was when it had really extended, I think, beyond 2 or 3 years. But we've seen the on and off of the lights. I was in Kumasi for the Easter. I saw it before I left, and when I came back to Accra, I saw it as well. But I think a lot of explanation has been given, which has been the case, and this has been that if we cast our mind back, we realize that MIDA, for example, Millennium Development Authority, for example, made some investment into the expansion of the T&D, I mean the transmission and distribution network of the country. And I think this whole PDS issue brought some issues which made some of the projects stall. But the whole issue has been with distribution. And that is why we keep hearing the name of Gridco on the radio or in the news all the time. The demand side has been extended. That is, we've had significant growth in demand, and the distribution is not able to meet the demand side. And so the issues that we have now is not a generation issue. When we had issues with Dumsor, it was more to do with generation, lack of generation, lack of what it takes to generate the power. But now the issue is not with generation, but the issue is distribution. So for example, within the southern sector, I mean, Kumasi and its enclave, there was supposed to be an expansion of the current HV lines, that is the high voltage lines. What has been there is the 161, and it was supposed to be expanded to the 330. And now is the time that they are trying to, as it were, complete it. So Dumsor, I will not say is really back, but we have on and off as and when, and I think the engineers have explained that these as and when they need to knock off certain nodal sections of, that is when they try to knock off to really maybe complete with their expansion works.
Thank you very much. So pretty much not necessarily that Dumsor is back, but it's more of on and off power outages. You made very fundamental points. That's that the problem is not with the production or with the supply, I would say, but it's more with the distribution. So, but what is causing that? I mean, to the average Ghanaian, the question is, so if we are producing more, why are we not able to distribute it? What is it exactly?
I think there is there's capacity threshold for the network, and that these are voltage issues. When so for example, I mean 161 kV is smaller than 330 kV, right? So if the generation is so much, there has to be a threshold where these distribution systems will have to wheel the power to the end users. So if there are not enough distribution networks, or the distribution networks lack the capacity of the amount that is being generated, of course there will be automatic shutdown and all that, because these systems have a lot of flexibilities that when there's an overvoltage, they go down and all that. So of course, the ordinary Ghanaian, he's not interested in all these terms and all that. The ordinary Ghanaian needs power, and of course, even those that even are trying to explain, they also need the power power in their homes to iron or the air conditioning to be on and all that. So it is something that they were supposed to work on earlier. And I think maybe lack of timely available of funds or non-availability of funds, these things had, come up on this day, because of course these things doesn't happen in a day. They build up over the period.
Thank you. Actually, it was going to be my next question, but I will ask Sapi. I'll bring you into the discussion now. So he ended on a very, should I say, a question. You know, it's these things do not happen just a day. So the question is, and he made a very fundamental point that the problem about distribution also could be that there's not enough distribution networks. So Sapi, as I ask you your opinion about the situation, about the power situation in Ghana now, even though I know you're not in Ghana, I mean, how do we come to terms with the fact that we could not foresee that we need to work on our distribution networks? What is it? Probably it's technical, we don't know, but it's a bit strange to the ordinary Ghanaian, to myself, that we were generating more. We knew we needed distribution networks to be able to distribute them, and we sat aloof until the situation is getting at hand. What do you say to that?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. And yeah, I would say, as Engineer Quatin rightly put it, the problem is not generation, but transmission and distribution. Yeah, so this is right. At least we have diagnosed the problem. So what actually happened within those years that we couldn't actually change these transmission lines and also the distribution lines in order to meet the demand or the supply from the power generators. So I think the thing is technical, as you put it, rightly put it. One of the problems is technical. Another problem I would say would be a management issue. And maybe the third point would be financial. Of course, all these the technical and management are subsectors of this financial, because I think financial comes first. And as Engineer Quatin rightly put it, because of this PDS saga, the money that's this investment that was coming in because of the PDS deal did not materialize because of the cancellation of this PDS deal. So we didn't get this money that we needed in order to change all these transmission lines and distribution lines that we already knew are outmoded or couldn't support the supply of electricity to our homes. So this is the major problem. And of course, if the money came in, we could have built different substations as it is going on now. I mean, we have different substations that are being built, some in Pokwase, some also maybe in Malam, other places, of course, Kumasi as well. So these are the major things that are supposed to help to address the problem. We knew it, of course, but the money wasn't there, the financial muscle wasn't there, and also, let's say, the management were also, like, maybe I would say sometimes we're sitting aloof. They could have done something about it. He also made a very good point about this HV lines, the high voltage lines. We saw that this 161 kilovolt lines were not able to support, let's say, the high voltages, the demand that was coming in. The demand was increasing, was always going up. And this 161 kilovolt high voltage lines couldn't support it. So we had to now upgrade to this 330 kilovolts. And this is what is now ongoing in some areas. And of course, it's the same thing that I think would be happening in Kumasi, because the load on the lines are too heavy. So for it to support and to give us this transmission in our homes.
Thank you very much. So you add to the point that perhaps our inability to provide more of these transmission lines or distribution networks would be technical, managerial, and then financial. I wanted to ask you a quick follow-up on the managerial aspect that you brought in, because we've heard that people also say sometimes the cutting corners where members of ECG or Ghanaians themselves would like to cut corners instead of paying the right thing, or would not follow the right channel in order to get access to electricity. We are told some of these things do affect the distribution of electricity. How true is this? Because then this will be placed under managerial issues. Is it able to affect the distribution of electricity if people cut corners and do not follow the right channels of getting access to electricity?
Absolutely. So you put it right. This is because, I mean, the management is always aware that these things are going on. But the lack of, I mean, I don't know if it's the will to actually change those things, or maybe the leadership is not ready to actually assert its power or authority on all these things, because they know that some of their members are engaging in this illegal connection and connecting some of them to the grid and without paying anything. And they also know that at some point, some people, let's say, or companies actually accrue a lot of, I mean, they use a lot of power. And at the end of the day, going to build them, they destroy these meters, which actually renders the money maybe gone forever. So these are the things management has to check in order to actually help income to actually get to ECG. Because if ECG gets this money, then Gridco also can get money to also do this transmission that we are actually looking for.
Engineer, thank you very much. Sapi, would you also like to add to this issue of managerial challenges that also contributes to the challenges that we are facing as a whole?
Well, in some ways, yes. Of course, there is always traces of this, be it financial or technical. So, of course, there'll be a flavor of some managerial oversight on this. And I think the whole issue, I think the conversation, when you listen to the current minister during his vetting, he was really talking about the fact that we need to look at paying realistic tariffs for what we consume. You see, the challenge has been with we ourselves. I think over the years, politicians somehow politicize these electricity issues on their campaign platform, and sometimes it becomes the main issues for discussion. Money, of course, has been part of it. We really sometimes do not have what it takes to, as it were, pay for the infrastructure, the other externality costs related to power supply and generation. But I think it's time that some of these things are biting us in the face, and I think it's becoming tangible. And it is time that some of these things shouldn't be on the political platform. I think we really need, because if you politicize energy, it is something that is always tangible. It is something that we do not have all the resources, apart from maybe what we can harness from the sun. The others, there are a lot of externality costs that we have to pay for because we don't have what it takes. So the reality will come back to all of us. So of course, there is a flavor of managerial oversight in the whole thing.
All right, thank you very much. Now, I come back to you again, Sapi. If we consider the 2021 budget, we see that the government has listed a number of projects that they would like to undertake and supposedly supposed to help address some of the challenges that we are facing in our energy and power sector. I don't know your take on that, but so for example, they talk about the rural electrification program. They also talk about the 200 megawatts Amandi power project. Do we really need all these things in order to address the challenges? How feasible are these programs or projects that we intend to roll out in addressing the challenges that we have?
Yeah. Before I come to this question, maybe quickly to add to what Engineer Quatin said, maybe one other thing that is also contributing to this power cut would be maybe this free electricity that was given. Because I mean, you give free electricity and you don't maybe pay ECG this amount, and you just say, okay, maybe ECG, you are owing me, you're owing government, so we have used this money that you're owing to, to deduct from this money. Yeah, so this also actually also contributes to this, because if government is investing in ECG, then they would actually be financially sound in order to actually also help Gridco. Back to your question, this 200 megawatt Amandi power deal, I think it's necessary, but it's not required at the moment. It's not critical at the moment, because we have enough. At the moment, we have sufficient capacity, generation capacity, to actually support everything that we are supposed to do. As it stands now, I think we have about over 5,000 megawatts capacity in our generation. And we only need, the demand is about 3,200 megawatts. So at the moment, we have enough to actually help us. But in the long term, of course, we will need this. And it's a good plan that going forward, we have to bring on board more generation capacity. So I think in the long term, it's a good plan. But talking about this rural electrification, the target was to get 100% in 2020. But we missed this target, and now we are around 85% if my statistics is correct. So it's critical that the parts of the country that does not have this electricity also are connected to the national grid, or they are provided with, let's say, off-grid solar panels and so on. Other maybe alternatives of energy can be provided for them. So all these things are necessary, but let's say it's not critical at the moment. But I would say the rural electrification is really critical for everyone to get on board the national grid. But these are not going to really maybe have any effects on what's going on now. Because let's say if you don't actually change these transmission lines, what will be the effects of, let's say, getting some other villages on board the national grid? Because I think, I think in the end, in the end, there's going to be effect on it, because let's say if the lines are not really strong or robust enough, and you are now connecting another village onto the national grid, then this problem of Dumsor that's maybe in quotes Dumsor we are witnessing now is going to prolong for a very long time. So first, we have to address the problems with these transmission lines, upgrade them to this 330 kV, and also do maintenance on the other ones that are, let's say, still on this 161 kV. Then we can be able to bring on board other villages that are not connected to the national grid. If you don't do this, then the other projects that we want to do are just not feasible at the moment.
All right, thank you very much. So pretty much you feel that those projects listed in the budget, perhaps in the short term, might not be necessary. Maybe in the long term, this might be very useful, but this is not a burning issue in the country currently as we are facing with. Thank you. So I come to you, engineer. Also, in the same budget, we also hear of the Ameri plant. You also talked about the Kumasi, the completion of the lot 1 in Kumasi, and other projects that are being done. What's your take on this? Are they really necessary, or you agree with Sape when he says that perhaps in the short term, these are not necessary, but maybe in the long term, these are important? What do you say to it?
Yeah, I agree with Sape with these investments. So the strategy of Gridco has been that, or even with ECG being the off-taker, has been that there are a lot of generational plants, except that they try to get off-take the generation that is very competitive. So when you look at the levelized cost of energy for Amandi, for example, the levelized cost in terms of the contractual agreement is very competitive than other generational sources that are on board. So what the strategy that Gridco and ECG does is that at any point in time, if you have 5 available generation plants, they try to pay the demand. They try to get on board the most competitive in terms of tariffs, right? Because they want the end consumer to also enjoy competitive energy. So assuming generator A is doing 10 cents, generator B is doing 11 cents, generator C is doing 8 cents. They will try to first of all get generator C, who is doing 8 cents, on board first before the 10 and the 11 comes on board. And when you look at the levelized cost of energy for what Amandi is doing, it is competitive than other generators. So even though the availability is there, it's not a problem. They also want to combine availability with competitiveness in terms of the LCOE. With the rural electrification, yes, it's necessary because it also affects the economic bottom line of the country, because we have a lot of drift from the rural areas due to non-availability of these basic amenities like the electricity to watch the TV or to listen to the radio, and also to support basic health infrastructure and all that. So that is also very, very important. There are a lot of these interventions are necessary, but of course, just like Sape said, I mean, they have to focus to look at a lot of upgrade systems that they can manage, because a lot of these communities are mostly island communities, where if you compare the cost of grid extension to the cost of doing a localized system that is an upgrade system for the community, it is more competitive for you to do this upgrade or localized generation system for them rather than doing a grid extension, because you may have to run cables through, underground cables through rivers and other water bodies before you get to maybe a community that needs just 100 kilowatts. And the cost of these ones are far, far expensive than investing in that. So yes, I think they are just in the right direction, except that these projects needs to be expedited.
Right, thank you very much. So pretty much the same, but you touched on a very important point, but is the fact that we need more of these so that we could also ensure competition in the industry. But of course, as it has been said, perhaps what is important now is to work on the transmission lines and not the use of the power generation. Now, engineer, you said something, you quoted the current minister when he was being vetted, and a lot of people also share that view that perhaps government should stop the subsidies on these electricity charges so that Ghanaians will be made to pay the full price. But we also see another way of perhaps doing it, which is rather the levy that they collect. So we know of the energy sector recovery levy. How do you juxtapose the two? Would you prefer that Ghanaians pay the full price, and are we ready to do that, or through the taxation policy? What's your take on that levy? You think this is working, or over the years we've been having this levy, but it's still not working, and so it should be scrapped? Or please kindly unmute your.
Yeah, I said, okay, so I said this is where the engineer turns into a tax expert, but I'll try my best. Okay, so, well, I think when you look at, I have very little knowledge on tax, but I think these are areas, electricity, petrol, water, these are areas that a lot of governments find it very comfortable to, as it were, push a lot of their tax collection on, because they know that at least they'll be able to get about 70–80% of whatever they are looking at from this area. Of course, I share with a view that these tariffs shouldn't be burdened with other taxes. Of course, if they are related to the industry, and of course we are going to have a long-term benefit from it, why not? This EXLA taxes and all that, this EXLA fund and the energy sector recovery, all that you mentioned are very necessary, because there are debts that the energy sector has that needs to be catered for, so that in the medium to long term, we will have a robust industry where things can really be normalized and we can really enjoy the industry. But of course, we shouldn't be burdened, because this is what is making people not pay even their electricity bills and all that. If you look at, I did a publication on looking at the last 4 years, even with this government. If you look at the last 4 years in terms of tariffs, there was even about 2% reduction from 2017 to 2020, the end of 2020. Whereas if you compare it to the last administration, there was about a spike of about 256%. In terms of the cumulative increment in tariffs, relatively fine. It looks good, but of course, if you look at the sub-region, we are not that competitive in terms of electricity tariffs, and this is what some of us are really looking at. And I think most of them, of course, is from the source. A lot of these investments, if you look at the capex for the investment, they are just huge. So of course, the end tariffs, when you run any financial model, the end tariffs will come out that high. So I think apart from even taking away these extra taxes on the tariffs, I think there has to be open sources for competitive bidding for some such investment, such that no astronomical prices for these power investments are done. Because if the capex of the investment is already high, of course, when you run any financial model, you are still going to get a high levelized cost of energy from it. So apart from removing the taxes, I think a competitive investment also has to be looked at.
Right, thank you very much. I think you did justice to it, even though you were careful as not being a tax expert or also. Sapi, what do you also say to it? You earlier on already said that one of the challenges which one of the reasons why we are facing this could also be the subsidy that the government gave some months back. Here we have the minister calling for Ghanaians to pay the full price of electricity, but there's also the other angle of this levy that's being charged. What do you say to the two if you look at them? Would you agree with the minister that we scrap this levy so that Ghanaians are allowed to pay, or we cannot also burden Ghanaians, and so we should have a way, like engineer said, we should also have open sources for investment and not to overburden the Ghanaian citizen?
Yeah, I agree with engineer on his open sources for investment. I think this would make the industry very competitive. But another thing, as you from your question, I think the minister is right. I think we have to pay for the right prices, the right tariffs. This will actually help boost the electricity or the energy sector of Ghana. If the government continues to subsidize, then I mean we wouldn't get this amount of money that we need in order to actually produce the power. Of course, another thing that is also contributing to this high tariffs is the 66% of this generation is dependent on fossil fuels, that is the thermal power plants. And these fossil fuels, of course, natural gas, let's say this, what do you call it? Petrol or diesel, crude oil is also really, I mean, the prices are really high. And sometimes too, this gas that comes from this West African gas pipeline is not readily available. So, I mean, looking at all these factors, it tends to increase the tariffs. And if we get some other sources that are readily available and that are not so much dependent on these fossil fuels, which prices are always high, always going up. And I mean, the prices are also not very stable. It always goes, fluctuates depending on the, let's say, these producers, Iraq and so on. So if we get very good sources, alternative sources of energy, which doesn't depend on these fossil fuels, I think this would also go a long way to actually help reduce those prices so that Ghanaians can pay lower tariffs whilst they still continue to pay this ESLA, because I think this ESLA is also necessary to actually revamp this thermal oil refinery that is not working, and other, I mean, also to pump in some a little money into ECG, which is also financially struggling, as well as Greco and so on. So these two are necessary, but the government has to do something to lower the cost by going to other sources of energy. I think so.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sapi. So if you're just joining us today, we are having a discussion around the theme Ghana's power and energy sector, and helping us in this discussion, Engineer Kwartin and Mr. Sapi. So far, we've discussed issues around power generation and power distribution. And it's clear that the problem that we are facing in Ghana is more of a distributional challenge than issues of supply. And so experts here are calling for a focus more on creating more transmission lines or distribution networks, and also looking at ways to be able to improve financing, but also addressing managerial challenges and the likes. Thank you. So let me come back to you, and then maybe I'll begin with you, Sapi, issues around energy efficiency and demand. If you could kindly educate our audience, on the following measures, or on measures that we think that we could implement so that we address some of the challenges that we are facing. I know we've already started a discussion with issues around financing and the ESLA that has been talked about, and also the open sources for investment and the likes. But what's your take on the notion that we should replace all existing incandescent and compact fluorescent lights with particular attention to residential energy consumption? Because we are told that they account for over half of the national electricity demand. Is this the way to go, and does it have any impact?
Yeah, definitely they have huge impact on the energy consumption in a whole in the country. So this proposal actually is really in the right direction. This is because, as you said, if we replace this incandescent bulbs, which actually operates with, let's say, 60 watts and above, to, let's say, some power of around, let's say, the tens, maybe early tens, some 10 watts to, let's say, about 20 watts. Actually, this helps to conserve power, and the power that has been conserved can be actually reused, used by industry. And this is what we need in order to actually grow as a nation, to grow our economy and so on. So all these incandescent bulbs, I support it wholeheartedly that these should be changed to these very light-saving bulbs. LED bulbs are really the way to go moving forward.
Thank you very much. Engineer, it's amazing. I'm sure you would agree with Sape that we need to change the incandescent bulbs and then start using the LED bulbs. But my question is, why are we still using the incandescent bulbs? Why is Ghana still, what's the term for it? Why is Ghana still importing the incandescent bulbs when we know that it's not helping us? Why?
So I think the incandescents are not really on the market or in the homes.
Okay.
What we see is mostly used for the street lights. Mostly used, those are the halogen lamps, the halogen bulbs. The yellow ones that we see on the street, right? So a lot of what is on the market is the CFLs, but the CFLs are also not efficient. So the LED is more efficient because you can get a CFL. The CFL are just the compact fluorescent lamps, so you can just get an LED that can replace a lot of the CFLs. As for the incandescents in the homes, they are not available. You wouldn't really see a lot of them except on the street. But with this energy efficiency, it has to do more with our mindset and all that, because it's not just with these bulbs and all that, but also plugging our laptops, plugging the telephones, charging the phones overnight and all that. This power leakage is what we call the vampire power. The vampire power is, the power that sucks the blood of the whole, energy system. So I think we need to, on the energy efficiency, we also need to change our mindset. But I think what has to be done tangible, even if someone is not offering, somebody will tell you that I have the capacity to pay. And so why should I even switch off my light? If you bring the bill, I'll pay. But of course, these lights are just going to waste. And as these lights go to waste, a lot of bad investments are made, and that is what makes the overall investment and tariffs even shoot up or hikes up. So if the government is trying to do the replacement of this, even if you leave your lights on, as Sape said, if it used to be a 60 watt that was on for, let's say, the next 10 hours, now a 3 watt, let's say, LED light will rather be on, which will waste less energy than the first one.
Thank you very much, and thanks also for the correction or the clarification that the incandescent the incandescent ones are not being used in our homes except on the streets. But at least you also mentioned that we are using the compact fluorescent lights, which is not as efficient as the LED. But I don't know if you want to speak to it still, but why? Well, anyway, it's a matter of choice, I guess, for the individual Ghanaian to decide which one. But why is government not?
Yeah, because, for example, if you go to places like Prasako, somebody who wants the warm light. He wants to just like in Europe, for example, when you take a picture in your hostel or in your dormitory, you have a set. The moment the picture comes out, the person who sees that Ghana, the person is not in Ghana. So people want to also have the same feel when they are back home and they have the means to pay, right? But of course, there are other LED lamps that will still give you that kind of feel, right? So a lot of these CFLs will give you that kind of warmth with the color and all that. So of course, it's a matter of choice. Somebody will still want to choose. People still use fluorescent tube, which is about 100 watts or 60 watt. That is not as efficient as even maybe a 20 LED floodlight. You can get a floodlight 20 watt that is very bright, has a lot of lumens, has a lot of hours of usage and all that. But somebody will still go in for the fluorescent tube that do not even have that kind of lumens and illumination. Yes.
All right, thank you very much. And I will come back to you again. I'll ask Sape a follow-up question, something that you mentioned, which is very, very important. You did mention that beyond the use of these lights, which perhaps could be regulated by the government or ECG and those institutions that are in charge, you also talked about the behavioral changes, the attitudinal changes. And I think that, Sape, you being in Europe, in Germany, where we could borrow some lessons. So what can we do? At least I'm not too sure, but I know here you are giving some money back if you do not consume the electricity to some level. Those of us in student hostel, probably we are not too familiar with this. But if you live on your own, then we know that you do get some of these things. What do you think can be done to address some of these attitudinal changes in terms of policies that could be designed to help at least check people who would misuse the electricity? Like Kwatin said, I mean, most Ghanaians would argue that I have the money to pay, so why regulate my usage? And is there a way that we can do to ensure efficiency in terms of the attitudinal changes? And the same question would come back to you, Kwatin, also what you think could be done for the Ghanaian system.
So as you rightly put it, in Germany, I think the way the billing is different from how the billing is done in Ghana. If you live alone, as in not in student hostels, then monthly you are charged a particular fee consistently for the whole year. So monthly you pay the same amount till the end of the year. And if at the end of the year the bill is the meter is checked, and let's say you don't exceed this amount that you were paying monthly, then maybe you can be reimbursed the amount of money that you didn't really spend. But in Ghana, I don't know how this is feasible, because we are now using this prepaid meters. And those also on this postpaid meters, I don't also see how this can be done. If, let's say, you're paying a fixed tariff monthly, then this reimbursement can be done easily. But maybe we can just see how we can be in the middle of this whole thing between Ghana and our old system and our current system. But one thing I also observed here is that we have this, detectors that actually detect maybe darkness or shadows. So if it sees your shadow, then maybe the light will turn on. And let's say for a long time, if the shadows are not around, then the lights are off. I think this is really reasonable for, let's say, a backyard light. Let's say, because when you are going to sleep, you're not using this backlight light. But if you want it to be on because maybe people will be passing by or so, then you can install this, let's say, detectors in order to detect shadow and it turns on. This will also improve the efficiency. And I think this can also be done for this street lights systems, especially on the roads, high road, maybe somewhere in the bush. If there is nobody coming or there's no car passing by, then the lights can basically be off. But if there are people moving on the road, then the lights can come on. I think this also help to provide efficiency in the system. But in the attitudinal change, this is really difficult, especially in Ghana. People will just write you off. It says, okay, maybe I can pay, so I will still use it. I think it's also boils down to education. If we educate the people very well, that though you can pay, but we need to conserve power or energy in order to help our industrialization agenda and all those things. I think people will come to understand all these things, and they will more or less change, and we will have power efficiency at the end.
Thank you very much, Sapi. So in terms of regulation, probably might not work as it is in Germany because of the fixed amount that tenants or individuals are allowed to pay. And then you also talked about the fact that education is key here to help address some of the attitudinal challenges that we face in our energy efficiency. Engineer, what do you also think? You feel there's a way, some form of policy could be designed to address the energy efficiency, I mean, in terms of the use of energy by citizens themselves?
I think the strategy is already there. When you look at the ECG reckoner, for example, or even when you look at the gazetted tariffs for PURC, for example, it is done in categories. We have what we call the lifeline customers, both for residential and non-residential. We have the lifeline is essentially those that consume 0 to 50 units or kilowatt hours of electricity. We have the 51 to 151. 150. We have 151 to 300, and it follows on like that. And there are different charges already for these different categories. So the assumption is that if you conserve more energy, you pay less. In terms of the units, the cost per kilowatt hour, you pay less. So that those interventions are already there, except that we all do not really pay attention to that. I mean, we want our comfort, and that is all we want. And I mean, some of us sleep and leave the TV set on and all that. In fact, I'm the best culprit of that. And of course, when it gets to certain times, for example, at this time of the year, it's difficult to stay in the room, maybe without getting the AC on, maybe for an hour or two, just to bring the temperature down a little. There are times that people even sleep and leave the AC on, and these are all kind of wastage and all that. So the strategies are already there just to mitigate or try to control the excess use of energy. Of course, the motion sensors that Sape mentioned is excellent, except that sometimes people, when it comes to energy management by itself, people focus so much on the capex that why should I, if I can get a bulb on the market, let's say for 10 cedis, why should I go and get a motion sensor bulb, let's say for 50 cedis, because it will be on and off. But you see, we don't really have time doing a proper cost benefit analysis on such investment, because at the end of the day, you can just switch the bulb on just once and it will work by itself maybe for the next 1 year. When there's somebody around, it comes on. When there is huge benefit on that, you are even going to save that extra 40 cedis from that investment compared to the 10 cedis, because the 10 cedis, you might be late in the morning, so every morning your outside light will be on, and that is affecting your monthly electricity bill, affecting your yearly electricity bill. So those calculations, we don't really pay attention to those calculations, and so investment into such innovations are very difficult and do not help either our pocket or even the nation's energy management as well.
Thank you very much, and thanks, Engineer Kwarteng, for also making it known that Ghana also practices a similar thing in terms of getting money back directly or indirectly with regard to energy consumption. And I like that you emphasize what Sapi also said about the motion. Is it this motion what sensory light or?
Yeah, the motion sensor. There are these inbuilt motion sensors that work with infrared. So when you pass around, your infrared communicates directly to the motion sensor. I mean, for the light to be on or to be off.
Interesting. So I think this is very good. Like you did a simple cost-benefit analysis. Perhaps this is also one area that people should pay attention to very well, and issues of education in order to help us with our energy efficiency. So we have very few minutes left, and then we will look at other alternative energy uses that we might have. So I start with you again, Sapi, and then later I read some messages before I go to engineer. I know the last time when we hosted both of you, I think both of you did mention other alternative energy sources that we could also look into it. And so just a broader question, what do you think could be some renewable energy or alternative energy sources that Ghana could go into it in order to help address some of the challenges that we do face?
Yeah, I think last time we all agreed on solar, and I think already solar has been installed. Maybe, if I'm correct, about 1% of the national grid is solar. And of course, we have also some solar panels that are off-grid. Some you can see that I think it started in Jubilee House. That we have this PV solar panels that have been installed on the rooftops. I think this can be maybe done in all the industries that we have in Ghana. So all industries and also ministries, ministries instead, they should actually follow suit to actually have all these PV solar cells on their rooftops so that we can actually save some money. Going forward, I think another thing that we can also use apart from solar is wind. I really advocate for this strongly because I see that we have capacity to actually also put some get wind as an alternative energy source. Because I think there have been some feasibility studies that have been done that actually attributes that wind is possible in Ghana. And of course, along the coastal belt, this is very easy to be done. There are so many other options because I'm advocating for wind because we can get even about 3,000 megawatts with wind alone. Which is more closer to our current demand. So wind is a way to go. Another thing, source of energy I would also strongly advocate for is nuclear energy. This is because I think Kwame Nkrumah had a vision. That's why he set up this Ghana Atomic Energy Commission. And today, when you go there, it's more or less a ghost commission, so to speak. So I think we should revamp this idea of nuclear energy because it's one of the cleanest energies that we can have. It has a huge capacity as well. I think nuclear energy alone can actually power the whole of Ghana. It can also give us another, if I'm not mistaken, 6,000 megawatts and even more. So it's another area we should actually invest into. Of course, the investment is huge, but the end product is really good. There are so many countries that are running away from nuclear at the moment. So it makes it a bit jittery to go into nuclear. But I think it's worth it. We have to really look at this option, weigh the differences, and see if it's a way to go. But I would strongly advocate for nuclear. There are other options that we can also go get into, but this might not. This shouldn't be on the national grid. Let's say you have some. We do some biomass, and we also do some kind of organic waste by segregating our waste and using the organic part to get some kind of energy. Maybe somebody on a farm, you use this, the dung from the cow, pig, and stuff like that to also generate some energy for your own use. I think these are the ways we can actually help to solve our energy challenge. There are so many options, but I think these are the best options for Ghana.
Thank you very much, Sape. So pretty much solar, it's an alternative. Wind, you talked about nuclear energy, perhaps your favorite, and then biomass, and also the use of organic waste. We would not have time to have described, perhaps we would have another talk to see the cost and benefits that these things we come with, because you also mentioned that nuclear energy is very expensive and countries are running away from it. And so I'm wondering why Ghana, we should go in for it when countries are actually running away from it. But let me read 2 messages, then I come to you, Engineer Kwatin, to also tell us whether you agree with what Sape is saying, particularly with the issue of nuclear or not. So Emmanuel says, it's a shame that Gridco and ECG have schemed to plunge the whole country in Dumsor total darkness in the coming months. Ghanaians paid and still pay street lights levy, yet street lights are hard to find on major streets. Same as the petroleum levy, water levy, road toll levy, and other levies. Every government wants to impose levy at the least opportunity to burden Ghanaians, yet there is nothing to show for it. Until accounts on those levies are rendered, Ghanaians should not pay, period. In addition, too much politics in the energy sector is problematic. This was also already mentioned. Politicians do not tell us the truth on energy agreements entered into. Also, ministers, government agencies, etc., should be made to pay electricity bills on their own rather than depending on central government for that. This will reduce the debt government owes Gridco and ECG so they run efficiently. Engineer, last time we talked about alternative energy sources. Where are we now? I was happy to hear from Sape that at least we've started with a solar source of energy, citing the seat of government as an example. Do you agree with him, particularly when he talks about the nuclear energy? And what would you say should be the alternative source of energy for Ghana?
Well, thank you. I think I am solar person and I'm biased towards solar. So of course I will preach on what puts food on my table. In fact, the one, managing the Jubilee House project. But of course, nuclear is also good, except that there are a lot of let's say waste issues and other health issues to yes. So that has had. I mean, we all know. Sorry, the history about nuclear in other countries and all that, and also the power. I mean, the power play that comes with it. So, of course, I will talk about solar, and of course, I will advocate for solar because, I mean, compared to the others, it's the most viable and all that. Yes.
And maybe because you mentioned that you are the one managing that one, briefly, what's the prospects like for Ghanaians? Is it something that it's cheap to, of course, it's cheap with the sun is abundant in the country, but if you could walk us through briefly, because you are the one managing it, is it something you feel there's prospects for it, something that Ghana would soon enter more into solar energy?
Oh yeah, I mean, you are in Germany, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at the radiation levels, and this has always been my advocacy for solar, even within the African sub-region or even the West African sub-region, and of course in Ghana. So if you look at Germany, Germany has half the radiations that we have over here. But the investment that Germany, for example, has made is over, the last time I checked was over 44,000 megawatts of solar, just solar. That is the investment Germany has made. So if a country like Germany that do not have, that only has, let's say, half the radiations that we have in Ghana has made such huge investment. The sun is not always high in Germany, and even compared to other European countries, then that means once we have the resource for free, I mean, it is necessary that we look at that investment. I mean, if you look at the capex of course, it was going to push you away. But as I always say, if you do a proper discount cash flow analysis, you see that it is your next 25 years of Akosombo that you are investing in today. So doing solar is just like doing your own Akosombo on your rooftop.
Interesting. Maybe we would have you one day to talk more about this solar energy thing. So can people contact you if people are interested in building solar panels at their homes?
I hope I don't get an invoice for this. Of course, I mean, that is what puts food on my table. So, so I'm available. I mean,
all right. Yeah, maybe I'll ask I'll read one last comment. Actually, it's a question, and then I think it's a summary. It's AK Mensa who is asking this question. My worry is, how come we haven't been able to solve the power crisis once and for all? What exactly is the problem that we haven't been able to deal with as people for so many years? So perhaps just a summary of what we have had. What's your take on that? I think this is what pretty much we've gone through, but he's still asking. I'm not too sure whether it's a rhetorical question or not, but a way of a summary and your concluding remark. Why are we still where we are, and what's the way forward?
So I think, I mean, when you look at the issue of power, even across the world, every country has its own, power issue, from generation, from demand side management, from T&D. I mean, when you look at all the various, when you look at the whole ecosystem of power, there are a lot of issues, except that a lot of countries have been able to put in a lot of contingencies such that the citizenry will not be able to see that there is a problem. So in our case, for example, we don't really have a robust system. We don't have enough backups and all that. That is why when there is a glitch, it's easily manifested within the citizenry and everyone is talking about. So for example, if we're able to build a robust T&D, if we have enough backup generation, some of these things will not even be seen, right? So that has been the challenge. And as I initially said, I think it is high time that politicians look at that and don't bring it on the political table, because it's more an issue of, technocrats looking at it, the politicians giving them the right, resources or the needed resources just to work on it. And of course, also shoving their interest away from these things, because at the end of the day, if you look at the power crisis, rather, as a business, I was in Lagos in 2018. And what I heard rather was that people, there's a whole cartel that is really, milking the industry, because people are able to bring in gen sets and all that. I think we have passed that stage where there was, the gen set business was booming and all that. So it is time that we look at it and solve it as a national problem. And all this interest, moved away from it.
Thank you very much. So this is clearly put, and I think this has been the message that most people call for, that we should avoid politicizing the power and energy sector. Not only that sector, in fact, most of our sectors. And if we are able to do that, I think we'll be able to make a lot of progress if we leave it in the hands of technocrats. Sapi, your concluding remarks, why we are there and the way forward.
Yeah, I think I agree with Engineer Cotton on almost everything he said there, except to add that, I think we need planning. We have to plan ahead of time. And if you plan ahead of time, then I think these T&D networks are going to be robust enough. And we see that, okay, there is a standby. If this goes off, maybe we can first speedily rush into this other maybe substation to provide energy for the citizens. Another thing is the lack of will to implement whatever we have planned. Because I think if you plan everything and you don't implement it, or if there is also not enough maintenance, then everything will just come crashing down. Of course, also another thing is the finance. If let's say the leaders are not willing to provide money, then we wouldn't get to where we want to get to. So I think all these things all boils down to leadership and money to manage it very well.
Thank you very much, Engineer Sape. Thank you very much, Engineer Kwarteng. I'm sure you're also an engineer, right? You don't like to record or use it anyway. So, Engineer Kwarteng, I'm sure that people would also like to have your number and contact, and as and when the need arises, we'll contact you for that. If you don't mind and you would also want to put it out there, this is also fine.
Well, I can put it out there, except that, as I said, I don't get an invoice from you.
Not at all, not at all.
All right, so I think it comes with a Ghana country code +233. Then, so the main Ghana line 0249
0249 29
44
44
82.
82. So +233, that's the code, Ghana country code. But the number is 0249 2944 82. Contact him for all your solar panels and
I think when you are calling with a +233, sometimes you omit the
zero.
first zero.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. So thank you very much. I think it's been very interesting, but I would read the very last message, which sums up some of the things that we have said. AK Mensa, when was the last time we changed our cables? Ghana produces more than 5,000 megawatts of power. Meanwhile, our peak consumption is at 3,500 megawatts. We're already losing money on power generation that we don't need. Whether we use it or not, that's a topic for another day. So the issue is not with power generation, it is with distribution. But the average Ghanaian still would ask, why is distribution a problem? Thank you, fellow Cebsarians, and thank you, all of you. Thank you very much, Engineer Kwarteng, and thank you very much, Mr. Sape, for making time for Cebsar-talk. And next week, we bring you another interesting discussion on Cebsar-talk. Thank you. I am Evans Kisi.
So, thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.